Good afternoon. We'll continue our media availability. Next up is the driver of the number 24 Exalta car, Mr. Jeff Gordon. Jeff just got through with practice, looking ahead to qualifying. How do you feel? I know last race you finished 5th. What do you think you're going to need to do to stay in the top 4 and go on to Miami?
First of all, I think we need to build a little bit bigger media center. Get on the media side right here from the beginning. No more questions. Yeah, you know, we did have a good run here earlier in the year. We had a good test here a couple weeks ago. You know, track was certainly challenging today. You know, we had what I felt like was a lot of confidence coming out of that test, and in practice today, the track was reacting different than what we expected. So it's not going to be easy. This team doesn't seem to like to do anything the easy way, but we're certainly highly motivated and excited about our chances. And you know, nobody is better at being able to finish out a race weekend, you know, like our guys. So I'm looking forward to it. It was certainly a good motivating factor for us to have that solid run here earlier in the year, because ever since the repave, we've struggled a little bit.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll start with Jenna, go to Jeff, and then to Claire B.
Jennifer AP, first, are you sick, or is it the excellent PIR audio system?
No, it's not the audio system. That seems to be working perfectly. No, I was kind of fighting a sinus infection last week, and it's just kind of continued and lingered on. Thank you for caring.
Yeah, you got it. So, looking back to last week, the after the race incident, does that escalate the way it does if Harvick doesn't help you out there?
Well, it escalates because, you know, Brad didn't want to, you know, face the situation. You know, as pit crew guys, we're kind of in the middle of that, and you know, the thing that I feel terrible about is getting my guys involved with it, and I feel like if we could have just had a face-to-face, there would have been no incident, you know. But you can't. Kevin played a role. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. I didn't realize who it was at the time. I thought it was him, but it wasn't until I went back and saw it later on video and got a good chuckle out of that one that I realized, you know, what that happened. So certainly it played a role. You know, let me address this. I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding. I have no issue with the guy being aggressive and making a bold move. If you win the race and the guy that you slam finishes 3rd or 4th or something, I'll be the first one to stand up and say that was awesome, that's a great move. But when you don't win the race and you ruin the person's day, then there are consequences that you're going to have to deal with. And you know, how you handle yourself after that is a part of that. And to me, if you're going to compare to the greats of this sport that have been aggressive over the years, you also have to compare how they handle themselves in those situations afterwards. And you know, the ones that I've had to deal with on that, they know how to not make enemies. They might not have a lot of friends out there, but they also don't have a lot of enemies. And if they do, they seem to find a way to patch that up fairly quickly.
And just real quick, how much does it hurt the 24 team to have 3 guys suspended and not here for the rest of the season?
Yeah, it didn't help. It didn't help. You know, in some ways, it's highly motivating because you know, those guys are as passionate about what we've had this year as a team, and the good things that have worked for us as you know, all of us are. We're just and they're, you know, sending me text messages, go get, you know, this thing done this weekend, and you know, do this for us. Those guys were there to protect me. I believe 100% that they weren't there to fight. They weren't there to go after a driver. They were there to make sure I was safe. And for that, I really, that's the only regret I have, is that it got them involved and got them in this situation to be suspended. So, you know, it's gonna affect us, you know, because it is a change, you know, and you want those guys in there. They're the best, and that's why they're in that position. So, you know, it's gonna make us have to step up our game.
Okay, let's go to Jeff, Clear B, and then back to Bob.
Jeff Clark from USA Today. Obviously, you're still mad about what happened. So how do you race Brad going forward? There's obviously 2 huge races left.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it. I'm ready to move on and focus on Phoenix. You know, I race people the way they race me. And so, you know, if I'm in a situation that I feel like I can make a bold move that I think is going to help me win the race, and he stands in the way, then I'm going to do the same thing that he did to me last week. So it's and the difference is if the same results happen, how I'm going to deal with it afterwards, and you know, face him on that. So my goal is to make sure that we have the fastest race car that we possibly can in qualifying and practice in the race to go out there and win this race. That's our goal. And that I can't think about what may happen, what might not happen, how I'm going to approach each restart and all that stuff. You just don't know. But I also know that the way I've raced over the years that have gotten me here is that balance between aggressiveness and patience, and feeling like when it's worth taking the risk and when it's not worth it.
But I understand you're saying that, but you know, it was just here a couple years ago with the whole Boyer thing, and that wasn't racing. That wasn't racing. There's a big difference between racing side by side, going for, you know, an opportunity. That was something that spilled over from being taken out of a race in Martinsville, contact being made after that, and an incident that happened here that caused me to lose it. And listen, I regret that too. You know, I wish I hadn't. That cost me tremendously. I know it cost Boyer a lot too, but it didn't go without a penalty. Trust me, that was a big penalty in a lot of ways, not just the points and the money. And I've dealt with that. I've dealt with it with Clinton, and I've dealt with it with the penalties and fines.
Let's go to Clear B, and then Bob, and then Alan.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Do you feel at some point you're going to have to talk to Brad? You'll see him at the driver intros in a truck, but you still have things you want to say to him? If
it works out, it works out. I'm not going to go search him out to talk to him. So I don't have any plans to do that.
Also, do you think you would have left a smaller hole for him looking back? It's very easy for drivers of the past and of the current to look at it and then analyze it after when they're not in the moment. Do you look back and see anything different you would have done? And beyond that, do you think crew members should not be out on pit road after?
Well, I look at every situation what I could do to do a better job, no matter, even if we won the race. I look to see what we could do to be better. I would have liked to have gotten a little bit better restart. No doubt about that. The thing is, Brad did an excellent job on that restart, getting behind Jimmy and pushing him and getting that run. I spun the tires a little bit, but not really that bad. I didn't get a terrible restart, but because I didn't have somebody pushing me, our line just didn't go as good as that inside lane. And in that situation, Jimmy is hedging to make sure that Brad didn't take him 3 wide on the inside. So that gap kind of opened up because my focus is on getting a good run through the top of 1 and 2 and trying to get by Jimmy like I did the run before that. Never imagining somebody would actually think that that's a realistic move to do that. Was there a big enough gap? Yeah, for a very split second. Do I think it was worth doing that? No, I wouldn't have done it, but because I think I would have known what the results were going to be, which is pretty much what they were.
Would you like crew members to be?
The crew members, there's nothing wrong with crew members being out there, but I think that what their role is in that kind of situation is I think it just needs to be back off and let the drivers handle it. Let them handle that situation, not to get involved.
Okay, let's go to Bob, Alan, and then down here to Lewis.
Bob Hocker, Sporting News. Does your tire go flat and you spin if the side skirts aren't flared out? I mean, is that the reason?
I love you, Bob. I love you, Bob. You're awesome. That's a good question. It's certainly debatable. You don't know if it's the tailpipes stick out too, and as hard as the impact was, it's possible that the tailpipes may have done it, but it doesn't help that those skirts in the whole fender, everything's being pulled out on the pit stops the way they are. It's definitely getting a little bit out of control, and I think that NASCAR is probably looking at it as, okay, we got 2 races left. Let's address that next year. I don't think they're really in a position to address that right now. I didn't choose the inside because I thought that Brad would possibly do even more things on the inside. I'll be honest. I thought the outside, and I just passed Jimmy on the outside on the restart before that. I still feel like the outside was the right place. So, it is what it is. It happened. It's over. And, I think the only thing I would have done different was just try to get a little bit better restart. Knowing what I know now, would I have hedged to the inside a little bit more to run a tire line? Yeah, I guess so.
Let's go to Alan, then down to Lewis, and then Tom Jensen.
Alan, come on, NASCAR.com. On pit road, when you approach Brad, what exactly are you looking for in a situation like that? I mean, do you expect him to apologize? I mean, what would have made you calm? I don't know if calm down, but what are you looking for when you're angry like that from him?
Yeah, to be able to just have a conversation to discuss that, why what their decision making process was at that time, and then when it ruins your day, you want somebody to have a little bit of sympathy, it doesn't mean you have to take back what you did. It just means you have to understand what it did for the other person, and that certainly it was not the way that one was handled.
Let's go to Lewis and Tom, and then to Kenny Bruce.
Jeff, Lewis Frank from Reuters. Where did you get the 3 replacements, and how much team building can you do in such a short time?
Yeah, well, Jingle, our Jason Ingle, our engine tuner, he's had some kidney stones this year since Brickyard. So we've actually had someone in place for him when he had to miss some weekends already. So that same person is there in place. And we got a lot of depth at Hendrick Motorsports and in that 24 team, and so we've adjusted. That's a better question for Alan of exactly how he chose the individuals that are in there. We have backup truck drivers as well that are there. So, I mean, on these West Coast trips like this, we usually have 2 truck drivers anyway.
All right, let's go to Tom, Kenny Bruce, and then over to Lee.
Hi, Jeff. Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. Do you feel like you have to win this weekend to advance? And if not...
That would be nice. I mean, that would certainly solve a lot of problems.
What do you think you need to do to advance?
Finish further ahead of the guys that are in front of me and make up the points gap. I mean, the thing is, how do you know? You don't know what's going to happen with the 22. You don't know what's going to happen with the 31. They have a decent gap, but I'm going to tell you, they don't have it reminds me of the position we were in Talladega. And I'm telling you, that is not a fun, comfortable position to be in. When you know the way the restarts are here, when you know, there's some potential for some tire issues here, when you know that you can come down pit road to do a pit stop and the caution comes out, right after you leave pit road. I mean, there's just so many variables there that there is no cushion that's really comfortable. And so everybody's going to be aggressively trying to win this race because that's the only thing that you can do to make sure you get through. And that's our goal.
Over here to Kenny Bruce, and then to Lee, and then let's go to Al Pierce.
Kenny Bruce with NASCAR.com. Jeff, you mentioned earlier, you're talking about some of the greats before that had been aggressive on the racetrack and how they handled it. Is there a specific example that stands out in your mind?
Well, I got wrecked a couple times by Dale Earnhardt Sr., and I can tell you the first thing that he did was, try to, put his arm around you and say, "Hey, man, I didn't mean to do that. I really apologize." And while you didn't necessarily believe him, it had an effect. It did, and so, it did. The interesting thing, there's just some guys you can race like that, some guys you can't race like that, and so that I don't know one specific example. Most of the time with Dale, you thought it was your fault, you caused it, and he was pretty good at doing that too. But if it was his fault, he had a way, usually with a bit of a sense of humor, to sort of ease your concerns. I don't believe that you're out there to try to make friends, but you're not out there to try to make enemies. Nobody needs enemies out there. That doesn't help you win races and championships.
Let's go to Lee, Al, and wrap it up with Jim Peltz.
Lee, SpencerMotorsport.com. So just to clarify, neither you or Brad has reached out to the other after last Sunday.
No.
Is this is it something that's we've talked to guys about this and asked them plenty of times whether or not that there is a code, or if there's just some sort of something you give to the other drivers just to, I don't know, show remorse or what have you, but is the current drivers or the recent modern drivers just kind of getting away from that? Is there,
Well, I don't believe in the whole texting, thing, calling. I like face-to-face. But there's a period of time that needs to go by before, sometimes you can do face-to-face. But typically I want it to happen immediately, on both sides. And then if that doesn't occur, then, I'd like to wait till the next weekend, when I can see them face to face, or if I run into them somewhere, I don't know. But I'm not one to do the calling and texting. That's just not the way I believe it should be done.
Al?
I can't speak for what other guys say and do and how they should do it.
Yeah, Jeff Al Pearson, Auto Week. A few minutes ago, you mentioned that the incident with Boyer cost you a lot of things, and you mentioned the word points. Are you guys now fairly confident that NASCAR is not going to dock y'all points during the chase? They didn't do anything to Kenseth. They didn't do anything. In other words, nobody's lost points during the chase. You kind of feel like you got a hall pass in that regard?
It kind of appears that way. I don't know. I never know what to expect. It seems to change. It doesn't seem to be very consistent. So I have no idea. I don't make those decisions and rules. I just accept them when they come my way.
All right, we'll wrap it up with Jim Peltz.
Jim Peltz, the LA Times. Jeff, just a footnote on last week. Jimmy earlier today said that if you don't cut the tire, there's probably not a fight. Is that a fair statement in the sense that if you just gotten shoved around a bit on that lap, that maybe that wouldn't have happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like I said a little bit earlier, if he won the race, I don't cut the tire, I finish third or fourth, I'm going to be on camera saying, that was awesome, great job, But that's not how it happened. That's not how it went down. And when you make those kinds of choices and decisions, you have to sometimes weigh out the consequences.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Guys.
Appreciate it.